Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. All right, so I am here finally with Dungeon Universalis, the new kind of uber dungeon crawl from Ludic Dragon Games and Oscar Bribian. The first board game maybe that I own from Spain, possibly. A Spanish-made dungeon crawl. I believe the game was even manufactured in Spain. Kickstarted a couple years ago. It was scheduled to come out, I think July 2019 was the date they were going for. And then they had some setback because they discovered that some of the English language cards had some errors on this. So they delayed it a few months. And then the whole COVID-19 thing started, and so it got delayed even a few more months. But a game of this size from Kickstarter, shipping from a first-time game creator and company, being less than a year late, and a game with this much stuff being less than a year late is kind of an unheard of thing on Kickstarter. So this is just the box top. I absolutely love that cover. I think it looks amazing. So far, I've looked through the components and I've organized them. So this is going to be a multi-part, not really an unboxing, but a multi-part detailed look at what you get with Dungeon Universalis. And I'm going to be giving my first impressions on, some of the things that I like that as I'm reading through this stuff and looking at the stuff. This is not a review or anything like that, nor is it a blind unboxing. I just kind of wanted to give my first impressions of this game as I'm discovering it. So the first thing that I realized with this game, the first thing I noticed was that the box is it is a little flimsy for its size and weight. I did have a split corner that I have taped up from shipping, but you know what, that is really, for me personally, that is not a big deal. A game this size and this weight, I expected more split corners, but I did go and I did actually reinforce all of the corners of the box because it is a little flimsy. And personally, what I think I'm eventually, and what I'm going to do is this game is probably going to be living in a plastic tub as soon as I can find one that I can store the stuff in. Because I think the box is really going to get beat up just due to how heavy and the size that it is. But in this first part, what we're going to do is we are just going to be taking a look through the books that come with the game. The second part, we will probably be taking a look at the cardboard, the chits, and then in the third part, we'll be taking a look at the cards. So one thing right off the bat, if you are worried about spoilers, do not watch this video because I am going to be looking at things without any regard to accidentally spoiling something for somebody. So if you don't want to know details about Dungeon Universalis, just do not watch this video because you might see something that you do not want to see. So with that said, here is the rulebook. It is a massive thing at nearly 120 pages. The cover is nice and thick. Pages are nice and colorful, and it is perfect bound. Now, a lot of times with perfect bound books, I find that the glue does give out and some pages can come out. That's happened with many books that I have purchased or that have come in manuals that are bound like this with the glue and this size. So it's nothing to do with this rulebook in particular, just in this kind of binding in particular. So what I'm probably going to do is, as soon as I can, is I'm probably going to have the spine cut and then have this entire thing spiral bound I think it'll be better for the long run. But for now, everything is holding up nicely. It's a nice book, and I have read the first 20 or so pages, and I'm happy to report that the English translation seems to be okay. It doesn't read, like something from a native English speaker. You can tell in certain places that it is translated. Some of the phrasing is a little awkward, but nothing feels detrimental to the understanding of the rules. So that's what I did have that apprehension about the translation process, but I think things have been handled well. One thing I still do have some apprehension about is just how absolutely massive this game is. I don't think you guys really understand how massive this game is. I mean, and it is a very detailed dungeon crawl. It is, the rules seem pretty dense. I know for a fact that this will be added to the long list of games that I probably will never play 100% correct. There are probably some rules and things in here that I will not use. Maybe some fiddliness that I will just opt to ignore and avoid altogether. But with that said, let's open this up and start taking a look. So I think right off the back there, I think we have a Dean Spencer drawing. So this game does have over 1,000 pieces of unique art, with also some stock art that it mentions. But in the back page here, you have a list of all the illustrators, and you can find out the page numbers and the cards that they worked on. I love this. I wish more games had this. Now, some people might complain about the fact that because there are so many artists that worked on the game, it doesn't have a cohesive, unifying look to the art, especially when you get to like the character cards, which we will take a look at later on in the series. Some of them are wildly different. Like we're talking like some of them look like straight up like Saturday morning cartoon. Some of them look like, traditional realistic fantasy art. So if that kind of thing bothers you, that may be something to be aware of. I don't think it's a problem. I do like when things have a consistent vision. I think in general, if you look at this game, I think it does have a consistent vision. It has a lot of different depictions of that vision from different artists. So I just wanted to put that out there because we will see some art that might stick out a little bit. I still think it's good. It's just, it doesn't have that single artistic vision that might be important to some people. So we do have this index, but it's mainly, it's really a table of contents since it's at the front of the book. And it seems pretty well organized. One of the first things we see here is this absolutely awesome spread of all of the stuff you're going to get in the game. I mean, there are just so many things. This game, I think Oscar really tried to make his end-all be-all ultimate dungeon crawl, and he might have succeeded. Just all of the options that this game has, from character creation, character modification and progress, the different ways you can play this game, one versus many. You can play 100% co-op, using all of the components that are available for the one versus many game. You can play with an app to help with the layout of the maps during the co-op version of the game to preserve some of the exploration feel of the maps. You can play online with a new app that they have released that only one person needs to own the game for the rules, but then all of the components are like in a tabletop simulator, but it looks like a pretty good one. By next month, I believe, he is going to be releasing a random quest generating system. And that, coupled with all of the travel events and the different settlement and furniture and special elements cards, you could very much play this more like a game like Warhammer Quest, where you're just playing a bunch of random quests, in a series worrying more about upgrading your character rather than following a story that you might get out of a campaign book. So it's really incredible the amount of detail and options that Oscar and Ludic Dragons have given us, the players. And here we see our first giant spread of art here. I think most of the art in this game is fantastic, and I am really pleased with how much of it there is. So we start with the setup. We get how to set up the heroes, how to set up the dark player. The AI for co-op comes in a little later. I'll touch a little bit about that when we get there. We got general game mechanics, a little thing about height and size. So I mean, like I said, like we have a height chart from 0 to the ground to 5 to the sky, different sizes. And I know that when you attack, depending on the discrepancy between the sizes, certain things can happen. Like if a very large thing attacks a very small thing, then they can get knocked down and that kind of thing. So it's a very crunchy game. I mean, just look at all the stuff. Here's a hero card and all of the stats. The game does come with a booklet of hero sheets. And you can see just all the different stats that are on each of the hero sheets. And here we have a breakdown of everything that will be included with the heroes. So the game comes with, I think, about 30 or so pre-generated heroes. But then, of course, you can create your own by combining races, classes, and skills that you can learn. And the characters, once created, will have a certain number of, I think it's value points, VP. And the way the game balances is as when you start a game, you add up the VP for all the heroes in the party, and that translates into a certain number of points that the game or the dark player is going to get to spend on things to throw at the heroes. So as the heroes get more powerful, the AI or the dark player will also get more points to spend with more options to do bad things to them. So it seems like a pretty cool system to keep things in balance. Then we get to a detailed look at the turn and all of the things. I mean, you can swim, you can jump, you can climb, you can fall. It's almost like I get the feeling that Oscar and his friends were sitting around and they started out with a very basic like move, attack game. And then every time somebody wanted to do something, they just said, okay, let's write a rule for it. Okay, now you can jump, now you can climb, now you can swim, now you can fall, now you can do this, now you can do that. And they ended up with this very crunchy, very in-depth, very tactical dungeon crawl game that also offers up a lot of exploration and room to tell cool and interesting stories. I mean, just look at all the things you can do. Let's see here. We have, where was that? The turn, doors, impassable vertical ladders, difficult terrain, swimming, movement of large creatures. Oh, here we go. Here's what I was looking for, actions. So here are the different actions the heroes can take on their turn. They can open doors, they can open locked doors, they can open chests, they can break down doors, they can break open chests, they can run, they can do great jumps, they can climb out of pits, they can search for secret doors, they can search rooms, they can search elements of the room, they can put armor on, they can take armor off, they can detect and avoid traps, they can deactivate traps, they can solve riddles, they can search corpses, they can identify magical powers and potions, you can activate a light source, you can move furniture, you can do melee attacks, range attacks, you can cast spells and other attribute tests. That is insane. One of the things, so like if you have a spell that casts fire on a weapon, making like a fire sword, then that sword also becomes a source of light. So light is obviously an important aspect in this game. Again, another nice piece of art there. If you get into the combat section, the combat section does seem pretty fiddly. I mean, it's a tactical game. This is a game that Oscar said he wanted to mix elements of an RPG, of a fantasy adventure game, and kind of a war game style combat. So I have a feeling that for me, it might be a little too tactical, but I will just simply not use some of the more tactical elements if I find them getting in the way of my fun. Different ranged attacks, all kinds of different modifiers. I mean, you have modifiers between on how big your target is, how far away they are, the elevation, melee combat here, detailed with all its modifiers, a whole magic system. I think there are like 15 or 16 different schools of magic, and each one has its own small deck of spells. So, I mean, the stack of magic cards for spells is just huge, and same as like the number of skills. Just wait until you guys see how many different ways you can modify your characters. Yep, so here's like conditional charts. When a much larger enemy attacks a normal or attacks, you get like a knockdown. Larger enemies, the same size, smaller enemies. So it's like, yeah, there are a lot of things to keep in mind. I have read some people complaining a little bit already about how hard the game is, as far as the challenge posed to the heroes, how squishy they are, how apt they are to die. I think some people might be viewing the dungeon master role as super adversarial, and if I ever play like that, it won't be. I will be playing to facilitate the fun for my group, but in a co-op version, I like it when it's hard, and I like it when my characters can die easily. I think that's more fun. So like that, I think in that sense, it reminds me of Warhammer Quest a bit. And then here we get into the details of how the dark player plays, the dungeon lord, or the dungeon master. Tons of options for that as well. So we get into some elements of some of the equipment cards, magic objects and relics, special elements. This is one, the special elements and furniture deck. These are two decks that I am super stoked about, because there are ways that you can add features to your dungeon on the fly with rules about them and different ways that the characters, that the players can interact with those elements. If you see a bookshelf, if you see a barrel, if you see a puddle, a pool in this game, it is not there just for looks. These cards will have detailed rules about what is inside those things and how they can be interacted with. So that, I absolutely love that. I've never seen a dungeon crawl that comes with these kinds of decks. And once we get into the random quest generation system, we're just going to be able to make all kinds of awesome quests and different things for the characters to do while they are adventuring. We get into character creation, which basically you're going to pick from about 20 or 30 different classes, and then combine those with 20 or 30 different races, and then you get to pick your skill from a pool of skills and your starting equipment, and you do get some points also to upgrade or downgrade your stats to make an interesting character. You get experience points from upgrading and leveling up. And then we have a nice detailed examination of how to play, going through different turns. So turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. Lots of diagrams in the book in addition to the art. Lots of pictures of components with highlighted things. So so far, I've only read about 20 pages, like I said, but so far, this is a pretty good manual. Not the best I've read, certainly not the worst. You know, upper middle tier, definitely. And then we get into a nice lore section. So the lore in this game has been written about by Oscar for quite some time. I believe he wrote a novel in which the setting for this is based on the novel. So he has been thinking about this world for quite some time. We get into some of the detail about the quests, the campaign system. Then we get into the artificial dark player. So this is everything that you're going to be using in addition to all the other rules for when you want to play co-op. And I'm not so concerned about the AI of the enemies, about how they attack. What I was more concerned about is if the AI-controlled dark player is going to be able to spring traps and different kinds of obstacles on the players. And the answer to that is yes. So that is very cool. You get to use everything in the box. You don't you know, the co-op wasn't just an afterthought. From what I can tell, you don't get to, you know, it's not like you have to put away some of the most interesting stuff in the game. Everything is still used. Another nice piece of art there. You have some different game options, some more advanced rules, a classic dark player, some thoughts on playing as an RPG, some advanced rules if you want to add even more crunch to your game. Rules on designing your own quest. You get a layout of all the different elements, furniture and dungeon elements that you can use. And then in the back here, we have a full list of all the skills and then a quick reference section. All right, so next up we have the campaign and quest book. Again, another hefty book, almost 100 pages, I believe. What is it? 92 pages. The back has some sheets that you can copy to print or print out probably from the website, keeping track of your quests and your campaigns. The game comes with 3 campaigns. We have our main campaign, which is looks like about 20 missions. We have 2 smaller campaigns. We have a bunch of independent quests that you could play as one-offs, or you could play those and just string them together using the huge deck of random travel and settlement events. Again, playing it more like a game like Warhammer Quest, kind of. And then we also have these epic events, which I believe that these are kind of like more detailed things that happen probably from the event deck. Maybe possibly side quests. Think of these are kind of like side quests from what I can tell. So this is the main campaign, the Return of Rosbal. You have your paragraphs here that you're going to be reading depending on if the heroes win or lose their missions. So because the dark player skill, their power grows with the characters, you don't really need to play competitively. You're not going to have the enemy player is not going to have his or her own objectives. So I think there are some people on BGG that are playing this more like Descent 2.0, and they're having some issues with it, and that's really not how you're supposed to play this game, at least as far as I can tell. So if you're having trouble as the DM, ease up on the players. Just try to facilitate fun, because as the characters grow in skill, you as the dark player are also going to be growing in the number of points you have to spend on traps and stuff. So you don't need, you guys aren't competing. It's not a huge race to compete to see who can complete the quests. Play it more as a non-adversarial dungeon master. Red flags on the quest represent places starting quests in a campaign. Yellow are flags that are part of that campaign. And then we have different color flags for the different kinds of missions also. So, I mean, even though the maps, they start off pretty basic, 1 or 2 tiles, they quickly grow into these kinds of massive tiles. And like I said, you can use the app, which I've already been messing with, to play this game co-op, to where it'll only tell you to reveal things that your heroes can see, and so you can keep some of the element of exploration even when you're playing co-op. Something I wish a game like Star Saga had for when you play that co-op, because exploration is a part of this game. And then we have the first of the small campaigns here, kind of set in like an eastern land. The second small campaign against orcs, the greenskins. This one includes some quests out in the open seas. And then we have our independent quests. So these are the one-offs that you could play if you just want to set up a dungeon and have some fun, have a battle or something. Now, what is that one? The House of Riddles. Oh, that looks cool. That might be a fun one to play. Looks interesting. And then we come into these side quests or these detailed events that I'm sure will be peppered throughout some of the campaigns. or like I said, maybe used as side quests. So for those of you who sometimes complain, myself included, about these kinds of games not coming with enough monsters to fight, well, that is not an issue with Dungeon Universalis. If you got it, you can get this upgraded to have 2 complete bestiaries. I do want to take a minute to thank Oscar. So I did back this game, paid for it 100%, but he was kind enough to upgrade my game to include the small set of miniatures and an extra set of etched dice. So thank you, Oscar, for that. So this was one of the reasons why I was so stoked about this game when it was on Kickstarter, was just how many different creatures you can use and you can fight in this game. They are separated into factions, and you start off with this first bestiary with a detailed look at like the different stats and how to use the book. And then you just start getting into the factions, and each spread here is a faction that details the enemies within that faction. And then you also get a chart here where you can roll for random encounters using this faction. So very easy. If you were a DM on this game and you would I need some monsters, you could easily turn to, all right, the Dark Elves. I'm going to roll up here on this Wandering Creatures. All right, a 7. 1 Iron Guard with a spear, something like that. So just super easy. And then the stats are all here. So here we have the creatures of the night. You've got like stuff like the Lord of the Dead, witches, mummies, zombies, ghosts, wraiths, necromancers, that kind of thing. Orc tribes, goblin clans, northern barbarians, demons, devastators. Now those guys look awesome. Straight up like Dark Souls 2 looking. Hosts of Bandmore, the rat folk, the beastmen, the cat folk and the dog folk, dark elves, reptilians and amphibians, dwarven kingdoms, first elves, bandits, human kingdoms. Yeah, just so many different enemies. You could use these as NPCs. Or just, this game really is it seems like it really is a toolbox that it is presenting to the players as a way to just have endless hours of fun. You get into beasts, so you have insects and birds, reptiles, vermin, mundane beasts. That is so cool. Canines and felines, a cat, a lion, a forest dwelling, a wild boar, a pony, a deer. So you can like have a hunting expedition. Savanna and desert animals, aquatic animals, giants, primevals, trolls, dragons, elementals, miscellaneous fantasy creatures, skeletal horses, a chimera. There is no shortage of monsters and creatures and people available to encounter in this game. And if that wasn't enough, you got a whole nother book here. So this right here, in my opinion, I can't vouch for the game, of course. I haven't played it. I haven't even read all the rules. But just having this many options for enemies to fight. So if you've got a bunch of minis laying around of these kinds of things, you could probably use like every mini you own, every fantasy mini you own, just in this game. And that's one of the things I know Oscar was saying he wanted to do, was he wanted to create a game in which you could use components from other games in this game. So you could use your descent tiles to have adventures. You could probably translate your descent quests into Dungeon Universalis quests. So the back of each one of these books shows all of the creatures that are in each book. And then we have this little quest book, which details little single quests for each of the like major story heroes. I have a feeling that these were heroes that Oscar created for his novel. And then each one of these is a little like solo adventure that you can go on with that character, which is super cool. So we have a character named Bosco, a character named Borgron, Shara, Herbad, Terrell, Larnak, Malus, Vlorg, Aki, Kuz, and that's it. So just a nice little, kind of like a little bonus quest book. And then finally for today, we have our Dungeon Master screen, our Dark Player screen, again with that beautiful cover illustration. And this is, I think they might have tried to cram too much information into this screen. I think all of the quick rules from the back of the book are on here. It's very small, might be kind of hard to read. I'm not quite sure how useful it is. We will see once I get playing. So, all right, well, that was it. That was the first part of my detailed look at Dungeon Universalis. Next video, I believe we will be looking at the cardboard as far as like the tokens and the map pieces go. And then probably in the third video, we will take a look at the cards. So, all right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.